see you. How's your team? You're doing good.
I'm sick, so I'm not even going to give you a handshake or nothing. That's a pound, a pound.
You're virtuous.
There you go, there you
You're
go.
virtuous. Good man. Good man. That's a public service right there.
Thank you, thank you.
Thank you. All right, let's get this up. There we go. All right, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome. I'm going to hold a hearing now for 3 bills to reform an industry in desperate need of change. Workers have been injured and killed because they were overworked and poorly trained. And New Yorkers have died in preventable traffic crashes. Today is a step in our larger effort to fix the trade waste industry. I look forward to working with City Council on commercial waste zones later this year as an additional measure to address this situation. The legislation before us today, Intro 1329A, which gives the Business Integrity Commission authority to register unions in the trade waste industry. Intro 1368A requires the Business Integrity Commission to share workers' rights information to trade waste industry employees. And that includes information on minimum wage and on safety and labor laws. And Intro 1373A codifies current practices and ensures that the Business Integrity Commission refers any labor issues that they see to the proper authorities. I want to thank Dan Brownell, Commissioner of the BIC. Thank you very much. And Speaker Corey Johnson, of course. And now I want to introduce Councilmember Antonio Reynoso, Chair of the Committee on Sanitation and Solid Waste Management and sponsor of Intros 1329A and 1373A. Councilmember.
Thank you. First, I want to thank you, Mayor de Blasio, for continuing to be an ally in our look to reform this industry. It's gone unseen and underregulated for too long. And I think in the last 5 years, we've done a lot to really rein it in. So I want to thank you for your partnership and making that happen. I want to thank Commissioner Brownell for his work that he's done with me. I'm actually really sad to see him leaving us soon. But want to say that, again, in the last 5 years, the work that we've done really means something. And I really feel like together we've been able to leave a lasting change and impact to this industry. I also want to thank Councilmember Moya as a colleague and partner in assisting me with these bills. And I'll thank more people as I read my statement. For years, most in the private sanitation industry have operated without regard for the health and safety of its workers or the city at large. Routes are inefficient, safety standards are poor, and environmentally sustainable practices are non-existent in many of these companies. However, it is the treatment of workers, many of whom are immigrants or formerly incarcerated individuals, some of the most vulnerable members of our society, that is most heartbreaking. In many of these shops, it is the very unions that are supposed to represent and protect these workers who are aiding and abetting their mismanagement. These are not the unions like the Teamsters, DC 37, or 1199, organizations that have a long history of fighting for their members and delivering meaningful benefits to workers. What we are talking about today are sham unions, organizations that are in collusion with the company's ownership to prevent legitimate unions from organizing workers and ensuring these workers never receive meaningful benefits and protections from their employers. Sham unions have been used as a vehicle for organized crime to retain a foothold within the carting industry. BIC's oversight authority only extends to the companies themselves, not the offices of these sham unions. One of my pieces of legislation, Intro 1329, will expand BIC's authority, giving them necessary tools to investigate union officers within the commercial waste industry. The other will codify BIC's responsibility to report out cases where they suspect labor violations to the appropriate law enforcement agencies. I want to thank the Teamsters first for bringing the existence of sham unions to my attention. Carol Feldman, who is now in LA from ProPublica, for her reporting and the connections these unions have to organized crime. I also want to thank Transform Don't Trash Coalition for their continued effort to fight for reform. Again, Commissioner Brownell for his partnership in addressing this issue. I want to thank my committee staff and my staff in our office, and Speaker Corey Johnson for his unwavering commitment to ensuring that the status quo in the private carting industry becomes a thing of the past. Finally, I would like to finish by taking a moment to remember Mokhtar Diallo, an off-the-books immigrant worker who was killed while working for Sanitation Salvage, who subsequently attempted to cover up the circumstances of his death. Had Mokhtar been represented by a legitimate union, his death could have been prevented. These bills are just a start. In the coming months, I will be working on legislation to implement comprehensive reform of the commercial carting industry. I will not rest until we can guarantee that Mokhtar's story will never be repeated again in the city of New York. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councilmember. I really want to thank you for the passion you have brought to this issue, and I know for my team and myself, we've really appreciated collaborating with you on this, and I know this is a labor of love for you, and you care a lot about everyone who's affected here, so thank you. And before I turn to Councilmember Moya, I want to also say to the Commissioner, thank you for your great work over these years and for the big impact you made on this city, and we very, very much appreciate it. Thank you. And now, my pleasure to turn to another person very committed to making change on this issue, the sponsor of Intro 1368A, Councilmember Francisco Moya.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to take this opportunity to thank you for your great work in ensuring that we can protect workers and really bring transparency to an industry that has suffered for many years. And so we thank you for your great leadership on this. And I want to also thank my colleague, the chair of the Committee on Sanitation and Solid Waste Management, Antonio Reynoso, for all the great work that he has done. He has been a champion and a voice for those that have needed one for many years, and the fruits of your labor come through these two great pieces of legislation that we have before us. I also want to thank Speaker Corey Johnson for his leadership today on these very, very important bills. But I want to really talk about what is going on here in the city of New York. And we know that workers' rights are not a luxury. It's a fundamental privilege promised to every man and woman who clocks into work. But for the private sanitation workers tasked with picking up the majority of this city's commercial waste, it's not just a business that can be dirty. Many of the employers are as well. The private carting industry is littered with companies that consider workers' rights open for dispute. Some see them as something to be subverted entirely. But basic workers' rights are the foundation upon which all empowered working class and robust middle class is built on. A union job is supposed to be a thing of pride. You can go to work knowing your union leaders are safeguarding you against a greedy and abusive employer. But too often the unions established for private carting companies, which pick up, again, most of the city's waste, are themselves the frauds that are abusing the very workers they say that they want to protect. This bill would take the necessary steps requiring the city and their employers to educate workers about their rights, empowering them to inhabit greedy employers and these sham unions. And I want to take this opportunity to thank the Teamsters and all my brothers and sisters in labor who stood up to make sure that every single person in this industry has a voice and has people that are looking out for their well-being. And thank you again to the Commissioner for all the great work. We're sad to see you leave, but you've left a great mark here in the city. And thanks again to the Mayor for signing these measures into law today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councilmember. We've got 4 individuals signed up for public testimony, so if they would all come up to the microphone, I'd appreciate it. George Miranda of the Teamsters, Eric Goldstein of Natural Resources Defense Council, Chio Valerio of Align, and Tawaki Komatsu. Come on up.
Thank you, Mayor, council members, Commissioner. Private sanitation workers keep our city clean, but too often they are treated like trash that they pick up. These jobs ranks number 5 in most deadly jobs in this country. It is reckless to hire someone off the street, not give them training, not give them safety equipment, and put them to work. But that is what many private carting companies do. And they get away with it because they prevent workers from having a real union. I want to thank Council Members Reynoso, Council Speaker Johnson, and for recognizing the problem of sham unions and passing legislation to fix the problem. I want to thank Mayor de Blasio for standing with legitimate unions and signing this legislation into law. A lot of people ask, what is a sham union? These are so-called unions that negotiate contracts that keep wages and benefits low and deny workers a real retirement. These are unions in name only that companies bring into the workplace to keep legitimate unions out. Above all, they work on behalf of the bosses, not the workers. I want to congratulate all the Teamsters in Local 813 who thought and fought for this, and all community organizations who stood alongside us. Next, we will be working with the City Council and the administration to transform the private carting industry with commercial waste zones. This is the policy that would allow the city to cut truck traffic and pollution while setting fair wages and safety conditions for workers. This is also a fight that is just beginning, but we are glad to have our elected officials standing alongside us. So I want to thank all our elected officials, and you, Mayor, especially, and then the council member, Moya, Reynoso, and the speaker for all their help and cooperation in bringing this bill finally to get signed. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor. Eric Goldstein from the Natural Resources Defense Council, and we're pleased on behalf of NRDC to support and encourage what we expect will be your signing of these three pieces of legislation. As you know, this city's commercial waste carting industry transportation system has been completely broken for many years. Irrational, haphazard routing, excessive global warming emissions and air pollution, little recycling or composting, and one of the biggest injustices of this industry, speaking generally, has been the way in which workers have been mistreated and their rights have not been respected. And so we're delighted that these three pieces of legislation all take steps to address that issue and to right that wrong. Some will ask why an environmental group is here testifying in support of this legislation. But as you know, social justice, worker rights, and environmental protection must go hand in hand. Amen. You can't have an environmental protection program in New York City if you're not also focusing on the quality of life of the workers who every day are going around the city to pick up the trash generated by New Yorkers. So we're especially pleased that you're signing this legislation today. We see this as stage one of the big three-stage rocket, including advancing commercial waste zoning, which we know Councilmember Reynoso has been working hard on with the Teamsters and a whole host of other advocates, diverse stakeholders. We believe that this will be the starting point for one of the most significant reformations of the waste industry in decades. So today is step one. We look forward to being here for step two later this year. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Chio Valerio, and I'm the campaign director at Align. And I want to thank the workers for speaking out and bringing to light what working conditions in the private carting industry is like, which brings us to today. I also want to thank Councilmember Antonio Reynoso, Councilmember Francisco Moya, Speaker Corey Johnson, the City Council, and you, Mr. Mayor, for signing this bill into law today. It is fitting that we're here today signing a bill that aims to protect the rights of thousands of sanitation workers in the private carting industry. For today was the first time that Martin Luther King visited the Memphis sanitation strikers before his assassination on April 4th. Almost 51 years later, we're starting to see a new light. Councilmember Donovan Richards wrote earlier this year that it would be no surprise to King that most of these workers are Black and Latino. Many are undocumented immigrants or formerly incarcerated individuals. Two groups that employers often see as easier to exploit because they have fewer job prospects. And indeed, these are two groups that bad employers prey on to fill their pockets. Allowing the big to better police sham unions, report wage theft to the proper agencies, and providing education of the rights of workers to organize will go a long way. We at Alliance see these three pieces of legislation as real progress towards ensuring that workers are protected. However, we know that more must be done to ensure that companies comply with the law and are giving the workers a real second chance. The City Council and you, Mayor de Blasio, will soon have an opportunity to sign into law legislation that will further protect workers, our communities, and our planet through an exclusive zone system. It is not news to anyone here that we have a real climate change crisis in our hands. According to the world's leading scientists, we have 12 years to limit the catastrophe. We only have to do a quick Google search on climate change to get more headlines that warn us what is to come if we don't do what we have to. Extinction, natural disasters, drought, food and water shortage, etc. And it's not just our planet that is at stake, it's our communities, Black and brown, who are suffering the most. Just this morning, AM New York published an article that links Bronx air quality to childhood asthma. And for those of us on the receiving end of the pollution, this is not news. It shouldn't shock us that roughly 410 out of the 10,000 Bronx children who visited the ER went because of asthma symptoms. But it should push us to do something. Our children shouldn't have to pay the consequences for our inactions. We should instead stand side by side with the thousands of young activists who went on strike this past Friday, urging us, the adults, to do what is right. Mr. Mayor and members of the City Council, the time to act is now. I hope I have instilled the same panic and sense of urgency I feel for my kids. The same panic that these young climate activists feel. Because, as Greta Thunberg said, I don't want your hope. I want you to act as if the house is on fire, because it is. We must be bold and unapologetic and send a clear message to bad employers and bad businesses. If your business model is built on stealing from workers, harming our planet and our communities, then you have no business operating in New York City. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor.
Good afternoon.
You and I have talked a few times about this company called NTT Data. You've said in the press recently that too much money is in the wrong hands. So for the benefit of this audience, I'm going to begin my testimony by playing back a video of our conversation on March 15th of 2017 at your town hall in Chelsea.
I don't know if that's something
Actually,
we
the
accept in the testimony.
First Amendment rights say I
The
can do
First
that.
Amendment rights are great. I just want to say I don't know if we accept that in the testimony, so we should keep moving forward. Okay, let me just say a quick few words in Spanish summarizing today's gathering, and then we will sign this legislation and welcome up anyone who wants to be a part of the signing. Estoy firmando 3 leyes para reformar la industria de la basura. Ahora, la Comisión de Integridad de Negocios puede registrar sindicatos, informar a los trabajadores sobre sus derechos, asegurar que los problemas que surjan sean atendidos por las autoridades. Con este paso, seguimos avanzando para que Nueva York sea la ciudad grande más justa del país. With that, anyone who wants to join for the signing, come on up with us. All right, there you go. I can feel your presence. tell me if you need more. We look at some of these numbers?
We do.
It keeps moving. One last time. There you go. Alright. And tell me if we have everyone covered who needs a pen?
We do. Yeah, right, we're good.
There you go.
Excellent.
And now, with the stroke of the pen, these bills are now law.